Well, how was the Post Malone concert?
Unbelievable. Incredible. Better than the first one, to be honest. He is using a band with him on tour for the first time ever, and it is a completely different style and dynamic than a regular show like last year's, and it was unbelievable. And then he played unheard, unreleased songs from the upcoming album. It was pretty fantastic.
Did you cry?
I held him in, believe it or not, this time, but it was close, especially when Circles came on. It was close.
I don't understand you, Dom. I don't understand you sometimes.
Yeah, I'm the most emotional man you'll probably ever meet.
That is so false, too. That is so false.
Really?
Yeah, Dom, I never see you show emotions like ever.
Oh, wow.
I feel like you're pretty well. Okay, I guess.
We
I
just need to
mean,
be together more, Noah,
no,
like the old
you're
days.
no, yeah. I mean, you're right. Like, you definitely get like sentimental about stuff,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
nostalgic. Like those are
yeah.
feelings that you feel a lot of. But like, dude, I mean, I roomed with you for 2 years. Like, you would tell me like 6 months after that something pretty big had happened to you, and had no idea. Like
Yeah,
your day to day, you do not show much emotion. Like you're a hard guy to read.
it's the long term.
But like I get what you're saying. Like you definitely are the type. Like if someone were gonna say like who's gonna cry at a concert, Noah or Dom, like it would be you. But it's just
Yeah.
like it takes a while to find that side of you.
On the surface, it may be a harder question to answer until you dig in.
Yeah, like I think some people would look at me, this fucking baby face, like piece of shit. They'd be like, "Oh, this dude probably weeps. He probably weeps." And it's like, "Think again, bitch."
Oh, man. It was great.
That's good. That's good. Did he smell? Did you get close enough to
I
smell
didn't,
him?
man. I didn't. And he gave someone his Converses that night,
See,
too.
I've seen videos of him doing that with his shoes or whatever, and I was just like, man, if the rumors are true,
Those probably
oof.
stink. Yeah, the shoes.
But it sounds like he's wearing like a new pair every concert. So like
True.
he probably, I mean, they probably be okay. Just
If
throw
if
some
Dom,
dunk some tea bags in them and it'll
yeah,
dry right up.
mothballs and all that stuff. If I would have been in the pit, probably would have been a disaster. But
I'm just imagining
we'll save
like
that for the future.
him like pointing out or something, like his arm outreached, and you
Yeah.
just like get all up underneath his armpit, like.
Yes.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Below Average Joes present verbal sparring, and also Holly Holm versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Yeah, we're doing things a little different. I know on Monday I said that you could expect to see us back on Wednesday. The plan was to originally release a verbal sparring on Wednesday, and then we would do our normal MMA weekend preview where you're seeing it now. However, the card this weekend is there's just not a lot to go over. You know, even the main event itself, I don't know like how much of a preview we really could
Mhm.
offer, and we would be very dependent on fight announcements and news. And we did get a big one: Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou. But we
That was
figured if
it.
there were any news bits, they could be added in to the questions for verbal sparring because I'm sure a big portion of the listenership will want to hear our thoughts on it. So we will have that and much, much more. We will start with our preview, but before we get into it, before we get into anything, Dominic, I want to ask you how you're doing. I know, now we kind of have the intros just us talking, so I'm sure everybody heard your thoughts on the Post Malone concert, but now that high, you've come back down to earth.
Mm.
How are you feeling?
Yeah, I've come back down to earth, all for him to release a single tonight at midnight. So it's gonna be a great time for Dom. But man, I'm doing good. It's been a great week. I will come to report some news that prior to hopping on the studio today, I did play Big Dave in 2 games of pool basketball, and I was winless. He beat me 2-0
Wow.
straight up. Didn't
Yeah.
even need the third game. I'll come on here. I'll be humble, humble in
Mhm.
victory,
Yeah.
humble in defeat. I'll take it like a man and I'll come back strong this weekend. So I just wanted to update update the listeners for those that are interested in the pool basketball rivalry. But I'm doing good, man. I feel like it's been forever since I've talked to you. I love you. I'm glad I'm in here with you. How are you doing as we get into this weekend?
The future is apparently not now, old man, because Big Dave had to show you who's boss once
Mm,
again. No, I'm doing good, Dom. It's good to see you. It's good to be here with our listeners, our viewers today. I'm excited to get into verbal sparring. It's been a while, of course. We're trying to pump out one of these and one of our cage side rewinds in alternating months. So get one of these every other month. So now it's time to do that.
mm.
I'm ready for it, Dominic. And I mean, I'm excited to get into question one. But before we do, we got to talk about UFC South Carolina 44. The main event. We'll see Holly Holm take on Mayra Bueno Silva, a main event that not many of us could have predicted, although Holly Holm is the most likely main event you will ever see. But
Yep.
she does come in ranked number 3, minus 175 on the odds right now. These odds come from DraftKings Sportsbook.
Hmm.
Correct. So then she's going up against the surging new member to the top 10, Mayra Bueno Silva, plus 150. This is going to be her biggest test to date, obviously. Many have filled the shoes of Mayra Bueno Silva in this kind of contest, Dom, where the UFC puts them up against the former champion, the veteran, the very, very tough test in Holly Holm. And time after time, Holly Holm keeps sending them back down the rankings. And
Hmm.
the odds, however, do not act like this is going to be some sort of wash. I think a lot of people may be
Yeah.
surprised when they see these odds and see Holly Holm minus 175. However, she is climbing. I believe a couple days ago she was a minus 150. So, Dominic, I just kind of want to get your thoughts on this main event. Obviously, it's not the type of fight that we would probably advocate to be a main event, but it is a huge opportunity for Mayra Bueno Silva. And now that Amanda Nunes has retired,
Mm.
for both ladies and really for Holly Holm, a chance to reignite your title aspirations, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. Like, there is still some stuff at stake here. Yes, it's a wacky, weird main event. It's Holly Holm's 8th UFC main event, if you guys saw the trivia clip, which is a shit ton. But Mayra Bueno Silva, I'm struggling here, Noah, with this whole event. So let me air it all out here, right? We talked about emotions coming into this episode.
Mm.
I'm a fan of Mayra Bueno Silva. I love this win streak she's on. I love the personality. I love having her as a fresh face for women's bantamweight, something that it's needed for a very long, long time, it feels like. But now she's getting shot up huge in terms of, we're talking not only rankings from 10 to 3, but in terms of just competition in general. I mean, we're talking Wu Yanan, Stephanie Egger, and Lena Landsberg, and that got her into number 10, which is already kind of crazy to think about. And now
Mhm.
she's launching into Holly Holm again, her 8th main event, a former champion, a 17-time title challenger. I mean, this is a step up if I've ever seen one here. And yet this line is throwing me for a loop because
Mm.
as much as I want to root for Mayra Bueno Silva and see this freshness into the elite of the elite, into the top 5, the title contention, seeing Holly Holm at under minus 200, I mean, no, I couldn't contain myself but to pounce on this number. And I feel like a lot of people will as well. And so talk me through here. What does your mind tell you when you see these odds? Because to me, yes, Mayra Bueno Silva is good, but this is Holly Holm here, someone who, yes, is 41, but has shown to beat competition like Mayra Bueno Silva, and to a higher extent. I was shocked that I saw the lines like this. I really was.
So you're probably, or maybe not, but I considering some of my previous discussions on this topic, when the odds are closer than I think they should be, I'm not going to say that this is like a rat line or something. I'm sniffing it out. I don't believe it is, Dominic. I believe the sports books. What I think they like about Mayra Bueno Silva is one, she is fantastic off her back. Her
Hmm.
jiu-jitsu is incredible. She's very aggressive, constantly threatening with submissions off her back. We have seen Holly Holm in her last couple fights, especially in her last one with Yana Santos, take a more wrestling heavy approach. And even in doing so, Dominic, Holly was not looking for the finish when doing it. I felt like she
Hmm.
could have, if she
Yeah.
really pushed forward against Santos, could have gotten a submission or even a ground and pound finish. Instead, she used those takedowns for control time, really just to try to neutralize Santos and dominated her, truthfully. But if you try to implement that kind of game plan on Bueno Silva, where you are using your takedowns more for control, I think that that is a dangerous game to play with her because she's so dangerous off her back. You look at in some of Mayra Bueno Silva's previous bouts, she lost to Manon Fior back at a flyweight bout a few years
Hmm.
ago. And one of the things Manon Fior did very well was her ground and pound. Like whenever she got that fight down, she did not let up with the ground and pound, did not give Bueno Silva a chance to really adjust and find her footing while down there. And she had a lot of success in doing so. Now, most of that fight was standing, but you get my point.
Mm.
I highly favor Holly Holm in this matchup right now. She
Yeah.
is what, 42 years old now?
41. Yeah.
41 years old. So we did just see her a couple months ago, and she looked great. It was against Yana Santos, who I thought by the end, like I kind of came on here and I kind of felt like that fight said more about Santos than it did about Holly at this
Sure.
point. So there is some intrigue with Mayra Bueno Silva. She's got some decent stand ups. She doesn't have the most volume. I do wonder, even if you go before this last fight for Holly Holm, like Ketlin Vieira and the in that Ketlin Vieira fight, I guess was really the one. She was more clinch heavy, like trying to use
Hmm.
her strength to force Ketlin Vieira up against the fence. It ended up not working out for her on the judges' scorecards. I thought she won that fight, but whatever. Um, you just see like what got her to the dance, what got her to be a UFC champion was she is a fantastic boxer.
Yeah.
Obviously, comes from being a world champion in women's boxing and has great kicks and all this stuff, a great striker all around and good enough everywhere else to
Hmm.
not have that huge hole in her game. But she does seem to be kind of slowing down a little bit. When she utilizes Dominic, when she was at her best, it was when she was utilizing really quick footwork and then
Yeah.
she would have those blitzes with those
Yep.
combinations. She would blitz into the pocket and then she would get out. And I think as she's starting to slow down a little bit, she's finding it harder and harder to have success doing that. So there is a window here where I could see Mayra Bueno Silva potentially edging this fight out. I do not favor it. I took Holly Holm money line on the bet slip this week. I put 2 units on it at minus
Mm.
150. And yeah, I definitely think that Holly Holm, the experience, the who she appears to still be, I think is just a better fighter than what Mayra Bueno Silva has proven up to this point in the UFC. She's a good prospect, but I don't nothing I've seen yet tells me that she is championship caliber. And if she is going to be championship caliber, she will have to be Holly Holm.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And, I'm sure you've seen Holly saying this week with the win, she's ready. She thinks she wins
Mm.
here and she gets that title fight. I know you think it's happening at UFC 300, her and the return of Ronda Rousey. But, and not that you're being unserious, but in all seriousness, do you think that is realistic for her, regardless of who it is? Holly does get in there next. And on the flip side, and I know this could be a Monday thing, is there potential title stakes here for Mayra Bueno Silva if she comes in and beats Holly Holm?
Well, for Holly Holm, I think that that would make a lot of sense. I think the UFC definitely would not bat an eye at putting her in another title fight. That was the original another Holly Holm main event was another Holly Holm title fight, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think the UFC would even think twice about it.
Hmm.
But the problem is timing's going to play a part here because if let's say that, I mean, I know they're talking about Ronda maybe now is going to come back at 145 pounds. At least that's what Chelsea Chandler said during fight week. But if that doesn't happen, whatever, I know it was kind of out there
Yeah.
anyways. Right now, Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena are really advocating for that vacant bantamweight title fight. But is that really a fight that you're going to try to shoot into um, the next era of this division with?
Yeah.
Like, is that really the fight that you want to like push that next era into? But is really putting Holly Holm in there what you want to do?
Right.
Um, I think with a win, she would likely be in that mix. Like, I don't know what the UFC would want to do. Even though Juliana Pena coming off a loss feels like she should be trying to get another win, I feel like she's the one most likely to be put in a title fight
Yeah, one
because
half of it.
she does a pretty good job of trying to build her fights, and she talks some
Yeah.
shit, and good on her for doing that. For Mayra Bueno Silva, I don't know, Dom. I feel like she'd have to do something pretty
Yeah.
spectacular here.
Yeah.
A quick submission, a quick finish, like really dominate this fight. Something that people would be not expecting to see against Holly Holm. And
Mhm.
if she does that, considering she's kind of this younger,
Fresh face.
fresh face, has somewhat of an exciting style, I could see it. I don't think it's very likely. And I'm not just
Yeah.
saying that because I favor Holly Holm. I'm just saying if Mayra Bueno Silva was to win this fight, I don't think that's necessarily how it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like if Meyer were to win, you almost for certain will get the Rocky and Juliana Pena fight, but well, you never know. Maybe she does do something spectacular, make it 4 straight wins, but I'm still just stunned by these odds. So I am excited for the fight to see if my favorite 135er can do something special.
It's weird. You would think with Amanda leaving, retiring, and now you have a vacant title, and Holly Holm feels like she's right back in that, right there on the precipice of fighting for another title. You would think that that would, boost the intrigue for this fight or the excitement, at least for me.
Yeah.
Um, and it really just hasn't. Like I'm not
Yeah.
feeling it for this fight, and it's not because. And I know I make jokes about Holly Holm main events, but she's obviously a great fighter as a champion. Like she's great. Um, I'm not seeing this being like a great fight, and maybe I hope I'm
Yeah.
proven wrong. I will watch it. I'll
Yeah.
watch the whole card. But out of the fights on this card, Dominic, it might be like the fight I'm like third most excited for. Like I think Sadikov, Terrence McKinney is a banger.
It's
And
yeah.
then even
Yeah.
Otman Azatar, I think I forget what the guy he's fighting is. He was like 21 years old.
Yeah,
But
Francisco Prada.
yeah, thank you. But I think that fight's going to be great. Um, yeah, I mean, dare I say, even like Albert Duraev and Jun Young Park, I feel like I might be just as interested in. We advocate for the kind of main events where someone who's like needs that next step, that bubble top 10
Mhm.
fighter, which sort of fits Mayra Bueno Silva. We sort of advocate for them to get main events, but Dominic,
Yeah.
it feels like she hasn't even taken on like much
That
competition in the top
yeah.
15. Like the
Yeah.
the Lena Landsberg win was impressive that she finished third, but it feels like she just skipped like 2 or 3 steps before going
Mhm.
straight into her first main event against a former champion. I don't know. It's just
That's so
and I'm
perfect of a
not sure if it's
description.
because the UFC really want that fresh face and really want to build her, or if it's because they want to try to get Holly Holm a more
Back.
manageable win to push her into that
Yeah.
UFC 300 main event, which will probably now be for the women's featherweight title against Ronda Rousey. But
Yes, it's still a division. There's a women's featherweight fight on this card. Just saying.
yeah, very true. Anything else, Dominic, on this fight?
It's time to transition over to verbal sparring,
Yeah,
baby.
verbal sparring. Question one. It is probably the biggest news story of the week, the biggest story going, Dominic. It's probably what we would have opened our episode with if we had done
Yeah.
a weekend preview today. They announced Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury, Dominic. Now, some of the details, it seems like most of the details are out by this point, but there is potential that some of this could be like, there could be slight changes, or maybe there's some assumptions we're about to make that end up not being true. So just for anybody listening in the future, just know that we're recording this on what is it, July 13th. So that is the details of this fight as we know them today. Basically, this is going to be a full-on boxing rules fight, 10 rounds, normal size gloves, normal ring, and apparently knockdowns, knockouts,
Yeah, they're allowed to
all
do all
all
that.
allowed. So not a full-on exhibition like Eddie Hearn was sort of saying a couple weeks ago. But Dominic, the one big caveat here is what kind of makes this sort of an exhibition is that Tyson Fury's WBC heavyweight title does not appear as of now to be on the line in
Ah,
this fight. And it actually appears this won't be considered a professional bout. So even Tyson Fury's O on his record is not at stake either, and
okay.
neither is Francis Ngannou's, I guess, because he's 0-0.
Oh
But,
no.
but besides that, I mean, full on like knockouts allowed. They're not doing like 4-ounce MMA gloves or anything. It's going to be really just a regular boxing bout, non-title bout.
Mm,
This will be happening in Saudi Arabia. It is unclear as of now who will be broadcasting it, but a lot of signs seem to point to ESPN Plus, which would be very interesting.
okay.
But Dominic, I'm just going to get your thoughts on this matchup, and we'll kind of get. I have a second part, but we'll start with the thoughts, and eventually I'll have you answer like what are Ngannou's chances. But
Hmm. Yeah, it happened. It felt like it was kind of going to, for the most part. I know we had a couple weeks ago Dana throwing his hat in with Tyson Fury and Jon Jones. But yeah, I'm here for it. I think it's exciting. I think it's fun. I think it's different. We don't really get to see it all that often. Francis took a chance on himself, and that fumbled the bag narrative is like no more. I don't know what the payday is going to be for him, but this is life changing stuff for him, a chance for him to potentially even knock out a world heavyweight champion boxer, and Tyson Fury is unbelievable. The hype video that he posted was pretty sick. I saw it on
that
Twitter.
was
Noah
sick.
sent it to me on TikTok. It was
Ooh, that
pretty
was sick.
dope. I think it's going to be a fun buildup. I think it's going to have a lot of eyes on it. Obviously, I'm not much of the boxing person compared to Noah, but Tyson Fury is a global star in the combat sports space. And Francis, obviously not to that level, but a huge star in the MMA space. So we're going to get this crossover here. Maybe it could set up some cool opportunities in the future. Again, this is kind of the first thing for Francis in terms of that new PFL deal, right? That historical contract that he signed. This is the first step toward it. Not that they're co-promoting it or anything, but it's the opportunity that he gets to do this through that contract with them. I have no problem with it. It's 2 weeks before a huge card for the UFC when Jon Jones is fighting Stipe, which is kind of ironic as well. I love everything about it. I think it's going to be really fun.
Also, 1 week after UFC 294, we're in
Yeah, it's right in the middle,
Abu
isn't it?
Dhabi. So I mean, my thoughts sort of vary on this one, right, Dominic? Because I come at it from a few angles: the MMA fan, the boxing fan.
Yeah.
I look at it from the fighter's perspective and
Yeah.
then fandom perspective, right? There's like so many
Uh-huh.
different angles,
Uh-huh.
and I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. So let's start with Francis Ngannou. He's the easy one. He won. He's already
Yeah.
won. He hasn't
Yeah.
even stepped in the ring, hasn't stepped in a cage in over a year, and he won. He won.
Mhm.
I'm not saying people have to be happy that this is the direction he's going. Um, if you would like to criticize him for that, more power to you. But unfortunately, Dominic, legacy does not pay the bills around here.
Mm.
These guys are prize fighters. As much as we talk about things like legacy and we cling to that,
Yeah.
we can't expect these guys to, you know, turn down. I think I saw Morning Combat. Brian Campbell's pretty good with fight purses, and he sort of ballparked that Ngannou might make upwards of like 40 to 50 million for this fight. Dominic, that would probably be more than he made in the UFC and all of his fights combined.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can't hold it too much to foregoing building a UFC heavyweight legacy when look at what he's gotten from testing his value on the market.
Yeah.
He's got this PFL deal. We'll see long term how fruitful that is. But even if it's not, even if it's a complete failure and the PFL crashes and burns, Dom, he's getting the fight here with Fury, assuming that nothing happens between now and October 28th. If he goes in there and fights, no matter if he gets knocked out in the first round, the payday, that's what he wanted. This is what he wanted, the opportunity to do this, to test his value, and he did it. So that's an easy one.
Yeah.
Almost every other perspective I look at this fight in, I'm disappointed.
Mm.
I'm disappointed. Like, am I going to watch it? Of course. Am I interested in it? Yeah, I'm interested, but not as much as I would like to be.
Mm-hmm.
First off, the MMA fan in me, now that it's all said and done, like it's all done, right? The PFL deals happened, the this fight has been announced. Now I look back on what we're missing out on as an MMA fan.
Yeah.
The fight with Jon Jones, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
fight that everybody
Mhm.
wanted. We're never gonna get it. The idea of him fighting even beyond that with like Pavlovich and um, I mean all these different guys, Tom Aspinall,
Mm-hmm.
like all these different guys that are coming up in the heavyweight division. It'd be so great. As an MMA fan,
Yes.
I'd love to see it. The problem is that there are a lot of people who feel this way, but they're voicing their frustration at Francis Ngannou. No, the people who failed to make this fight happen are three letters: UFC.
Mm-hmm.
They did not give him the money that obviously he was able to go make for himself, anyways. And that's who the frustration should be aimed at for what we're missing out on. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing. As a boxing fan, I'm even more frustrated because you have Tyson Fury, who's the WBC champion. Alexander Usyk uh, holds the other three major titles. You had this opportunity to have an undisputed heavyweight champion. I mean, a massive fight there
Mm.
between Usyk and Fury. And I don't know the full ins and outs of the negotiations, Dom, but everything that comes out seems like Fury really just didn't want to take this fight with Usyk.
Okay.
It just he was, I mean, just everything that comes out, like, okay, he wanted 70-30 split on the fight purse. Okay, he's the bigger draw, right? Makes sense. But then if Usyk would have won the rematch that he wanted a rematch clause, and the rematch would also be a 70-30
Oh.
split for Fury. So like it seemed like his team was trying to do anything they could to just make Usyk walk away from the table. And I think that's because if you're Tyson Fury, right, you probably are trying to weigh like how can I make the most money and take on the least amount of risk, right? He's already a global superstar. He's upwards and he's in his mid to late 30s, I think, at this point. Um, he, I think, looked at this as like I get paid. I don't know how much he's going to get paid, but Saudi Arabia is throwing out bands to
Mm-hmm.
make these fights happen. So I bet he is making a pretty penny for this. And what's the risk, Dom? I mean, Francis Ngannou was a dangerous power puncher, one of the most powerful guys we've ever seen in all combat sports. But he's never boxed professionally ever. He's going
Yeah.
up against one of the heavyweight boxers best of this era.
Yeah.
I mean, his chances are very slim here.
Of course.
So I can understand why he would want this fight, but I'm still frustrated with him because he has much more bargaining power. He could have went and gotten a similar payday to box Alexander Usyk.
A bigger fight for
So
the
on the
sport.
boxing
Yeah.
side, I am more frustrated directly with the participant and Tyson Fury. He's got much more power in these negotiations than Ngannou did coming from MMA. So yeah, I'm a little frustrated with this fight, and I think oh, I didn't mention also another frustrating part. Maybe I already said this. Did I say I'm frustrated with the fact that there's no title on the line here?
You did not, but there you go.
And the fact that there's no O on the line. Like, I'm not saying, as a boxing fan, I'm not exactly wanting to have guys who've never boxed professionally come in and fight for a title in their first fight. But what's this fight really mean? Like, what's the
Yeah.
stakes here? So you're telling me that if Ngannou did go in there and knock out Tyson Fury would still be undefeated. I mean,
Right.
sure, we all watched it, but it just doesn't. He wouldn't lose his title. Like, there's just I don't really know. Like, I'm comparing this to like the McGregor Mayweather thing, right?
Was that counted, right?
Yeah,
For
that did.
Floyd? Okay.
So Floyd Mayweather was undefeated, right? So
Yeah.
that was the big thing. He's going up against a power puncher. You know, he's putting his O on the line. He didn't have a major title. He's kind of been in and out of retirement, but I think one of the major bodies in boxing put together like the money belt or whatever. It's like Jesus
Mm-hmm.
Christ, like I mean, how on the nose do we have to be with this? But at least like there were it was a professional bout. Like it just felt
Yeah.
like there was stakes to it. Here, sure, there still is. Like everybody's going to be watching, right? So if you see Fury get knocked out, you can't just turn around tomorrow and say no, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's out of the possible uh, packages you could have put together that this fight would take place under. This is on the lower side. It's not as
Mm.
bad as if they did a full on exhibition with no knockdowns and no
Yeah.
knockouts, but it still feels like it's a little lackluster to me. I'm still going to watch it. I'll be interested in it when the time comes. But I felt like you got to kind of, I got to voice my frustration with the fact that this is ultimately what we're getting.
Yeah, it's true. It to an extent, I don't want to use the phrase that everybody's like throwing around right now, but everybody says gimmick fights. Like that's the big phrase
Mm.
going around from Dana and Ariel and all these shows. And at the end of the day, like, yeah, I guess it kind of is. And you add in those factors without it, the O being on the line, a belt being on the line, it's not a professional bout, yada, yada, yada. It makes it feel even more so that way. And I just wonder, it is a shame that a lot of people, like you said at the front of your point about people hating on Francis here, like there's just no reason. There's no rhyme or reason to be hating on Francis here because if any of us are in the same situation, what are you going to do? You're going to put your family and your financials first over anything else, including the legacy and the belts, as Noah mentioned. So it's just interesting. There's going to be a lot more frustration from what I see toward Francis than what there is toward Tyson. But do you feel from the boxing community there's also the same shared frustrations that you have with Tyson?
Oh, yeah. People want Tyson to be stripped and everything
Mm-hmm.
else. I mean, yeah, I'm not even like as into it as obviously a lot of people are, and I've heard a lot of it. So, and I get it. I get their frustration. Um, Let me ask you this, Dominic. This is just a random question that I've seen this fight. It's obviously being compared to the McGregor Mayweather fight, right? Due to the
Yeah.
similar status of both guys and what sports they're coming from. And yet, I actually want to compare it to a fight we didn't get.
Hmm.
Why is it that everybody on the MMA side is so supportive of Ngannou getting this, right? Getting this bag, getting this opportunity. And yet, when Kamaru Usman tried to pursue a Canelo Alvarez fight, he was sort of clowned for it and everybody was very dismissive of him. I'm curious if you feel like,
Yeah.
did you notice that kind of difference in how people sort of reacted when they presented that? Like, what do you think that is?
I almost wonder if it's just like the realism of it happening maybe was a factor in why it didn't get as big. I mean, I felt like a lot of people were laughing at Kamaru because one, he was obviously still, I think, a champion at the time he was talking
Mhm.
about it. He was still an active fighter and whatnot. So it was easier to dismiss and laugh it off as like, oh, and if he's even in there, he has like they'd say he probably has a lesser chance to beat Canelo, obviously, than Francis does to beat Tyson Fury. I think that's just how it works with these heavier guys. But with Francis, I think when you leave the UFC one to become a free agent, became more realistic. And then you add in the contract that he signed with the PFL. I think that's what made this added eyeballs and the more criticism because they knew like this is actually probable to happen, and now it is happening. That's what I would
Yeah,
guess.
I would. My best guess for that was that Ngannou was challenging the system, right? The
Yeah.
entire, I mean, the UFC do, I'm not going to say the word monopoly, but others have called it that. They do control a very large share of any sort of money that comes in for MMA. So he challenged that system. Like instead of embracing being a UFC heavyweight champion, he looked to maximize his value elsewhere, and he
Hmm.
did. With Kamaru Usman, the talk was while he was a sitting champion and did not seem to have any interest in leaving the UFC either. So maybe a part of it was the actual evaluation of their chances, but make no mistake, everyone listening, Francis Ngannou has a puncher's chance, and that's it.
Yeah.
But obviously that puncher's chance is going to be better than most.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
Anything else you'd like to say about this fight, or maybe Ngannou's chances before we move on?
No, I think the fight's all there. The chances obviously are slim, and I just want to touch on that third thing there, the long term impact, real fast. I think there's a lasting long term impact if Francis Ngannou comes in and does beat Tyson Fury, does knock out Tyson Fury. Then and only then do you really see this Francis situation that we've witnessed over the last year, I think, come into play more with more prominent big name fighters. But if he goes in and loses, it's like, he was supposed to lose, so it is
Yeah.
what it is. He got money and that. But if he wins, I think there could be a long term impact there, and especially for Francis, obviously, but it could be a trickle down effect into the sport.
I think, Dominic, I think the long term impact actually has already started. I think long term in MMA, you're going to see this tug of war between the UFC trying to change how they do their contracts to try to make them maybe a little bit more restrictive, even though they already are pretty restrictive. And then some of the bigger name fighters that come through trying to test their value. I believe that this may end up being a huge moment that could spring forward some positive change for the fighters involved.
Hmm.
Um, there could be some negative impacts on the actual product. There's a lot of factors that could affect really the entire sport. And I do think long term we could see a ripple down effect through the entire sport of MMA and the UFC in general. And I think it might be a little bit needed for the UFC to have to feel challenged in some way.
Yeah, I think so. What's wrong with it, right?
Right. I think that only will, I mean, it only helps, I think, everybody involved, the fighters, us. Like,
And
if the
competing
UFC feel
brands.
challenged, yeah, like I think that
Hmm.
this is healthy. We should
Yes,
not
100%.
have one company that feels like they can just coast. And I think that's what the UFC has been doing for a
Right.
while, even though
Yep,
we
we've
do
touched
give,
on that.
hey, look, last week, amazing card, right? They are
Hmm.
always going to put on amazing cards. I still
Yes.
love watching UFC. I love the UFC. I mean, I'm not trying to be a UFC hater, but you have to kind of look at it from our perspective from the other side, right?
Hmm.
The human perspective, those fighters, they probably deserve a little bit more.
Well, and imagine, right, the product that we get is still great more often than not right now in the UFC. But imagine they have that competition, they have that challenge, they have that nudge. What type of product could we get then? You know what I mean? Like that could be an improved product as well. So it's going to be interesting to watch this all play out.
Yeah. Question number 2, submitted by the man known as Mystic P, a good friend of me and Dom's. Congratulations to him and his family. He just moved to the great state of Tennessee, so I miss him very much. As soon as I moved back, he decided to move out. Not upset about it at all. But no, and in all seriousness, I'm happy for him. I hope everything went well. But he did submit a question for us via text message, Dominic.
Yep.
And he said, for a moment, let's live in a world where Stipe, in his words, sleeps Jon Jones. So we're saying in a world where Stipe knocks out Jon Jones, what happens next?
Oof. Ooh, that's a question right there. I love it. It was like from the rafters last second. It was kind of like the grab his dick and twist it thing from Bellator in Chicago last year. Um, you know, again, we've touched on this fight so many times during the almost 3 years we've been doing this show. And now we are finally getting it. Obviously, November 11th, Madison Square Garden. It's a huge fight for legacy. And if Stipe were to sleep Jon Jones, what happens next? Well, I view this fight, it's strange the way I view this fight because I could easily see, win or lose, for both gentlemen, a retirement type situation, regardless of
So
any of
you're
the
almost
outcomes.
tempted to say that it
So,
doesn't change much at all.
like, it may not change anything and give us a vacant title, as crazy as that may sound. Um, but I say, if Stipe sleeps Jon Jones, what happens next? He obviously cements himself into the top 10, maybe even the top 5 greatest fighters of all time all of a sudden. And would he fight again? I don't know, man. I think a win over John, we've talked about Stipe's legacy. It's already been cemented. This is just gravy, baby. I mean, obviously, this is huge for him, but he's not going to want to go fight Sergey Pavlovich next and Cyril Gahn and Tom Aspinall. I just don't see that happening. So I think Stipe would ride off into the sunset having finished his career knocking out the greatest fighter of all time. That's what I think.
I was tempted to say that, but in all honesty, if Jon Jones took that loss, that real first legitimate loss, I think he'd want it back.
They run it
So I
back
think we'd get a
immediately.
rematch. UFC 300, perhaps,
Yeah.
because it would line up, right? So I think that's what would happen, Dominic. I think it'd be a huge moment. I think it would definitely put Stipe in top 5 territory. I think he's already in top 10 territory. Like, what are you smoking over there, Dom?
That's true.
You had Stipe in your top 10 way back when.
It's been so
and
long.
Now you're
I
saying
can't
if
remember.
he beats the number 1 fighter of all time, that he maybe is top 10. Come on, that's our hero. That's our fireman right there.
Yes.
But no, I think that would be massive. And I do want to just say for a second, I understand. I've been highly favoring Jon Jones in this fight for years, ever since we started the show.
Yeah.
But now I'm about to turn around and come back to the Stipe side, because some of the reactions to this fight have been crazy, Dom. I have heard people that I really, like their opinions and watch what they do and stuff in the space, say with confidence that they believe Francis Ngannou has more of a chance than Stipe does in their respective fights. I think that is crazy.
Like Francis having a better chance to beat Tyson than
Yes,
Stipe beating.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, I've heard people say that with confidence, and
Hmm.
I think that's a crazy take. I think for people to say that Stipe is washed and all this stuff, I get it. He hasn't fought in a couple years, but let's not forget his last fight. Yes, he got knocked the fuck out. But he was the heavyweight champion going into that fight.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying. Do I have highly favored Jon Jones to win this fight? Yes, and I think he does it pretty much with ease, because I do believe Stipe, he's probably who knows what he's been doing the last couple of years. He obviously has kept himself in shape. He looks great.
Yeah.
But he's not that involved with the fight game. He doesn't really think about it. He's gone back home. He's got a family. He's full-time firefighter, right? Now it's almost well, I got the payday. Let's go back and do it, right? So,
yeah.
So I don't really know what's going through his head. I don't know how much he really wants this. And because of that, I do highly favor Jon Jones. And not to mention that Jon Jones is just incredible. But even if you were let's say Stipe is kind of washed, he's an old man. He's not as good as he once was. Have we really proven that Jon Jones is still Jon Jones at heavyweight?
Yeah.
The fight with Ciryl Gane was impressive and emphatic.
Blink and you miss it, though, right?
But it was so quick.
Yeah.
And showed so little.
Yeah. It's almost a shame.
You got to think Stipe is going to put up a better effort than Ciryl Gane did.
One would think. Yeah.
Or at least challenge him a little bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just talking a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll at least see Jon Jones strike on the feet at heavyweight. See how that transition happens. Maybe see him take a punch at heavyweight.
Yeah.
These are things. Again, I said the Ciryl Gane fight. I was like, Jon Jones, best fighter of all time. That's impressive win. But it does leave a little bit of room for okay, but how would he do if it went a little longer at heavyweight, right?
Stipe, much better wrestler than Ciryl.
So I'm just saying, now I feel like I'm turning around. I felt like I was the only one back in 2020 that thought Jon Jones was going to wipe the floor with Stipe. And now I'm coming back and trying to challenge people to say Francis Ngannou has a better chance against Tyson Fury. Maybe Ngannou knocks him out and Stipe gets fucking boatloaded in a round. But I just can't see how someone can say that.
And what do you think, now we're a little, not too far off the rails, but you brought up that point, and that's kind of crazy because, let's just compare it in this way to make it easier on ourselves. Would you imagine Stipe opening as a bigger underdog betting-wise than Francis versus Tyson? Like, there's no
I
way I could see that
I
happening.
don't think so. I think the opening odds, I thought Fury was like a minus 800, which I don't know what that would put
Probably like plus
Ngannou.
500, probably ish, 550. So Stipe would not
I
be that
bet, and
big of an
I
underdog.
really, I think Stipe might be a plus 500.
Really? I would see like plus 300, I think.
If he's plus 300, I'm throwing a lot of money on Jon Jones. I hate, see, look what's happening now. See, people can't figure out what side I'm on here.
Yeah.
No, damn it, that's our fucking guy, Stipe.
He's on both of our walls now. Come on.
Yeah, like I'm talking blasphemous about the guy, and he's staring at me right now.
Anyways.
Yeah. Question number 3, Dominic. How much MMA content do you watch, and does it ever affect your opinion before doing or before recording podcasts?
Um, I feel like at one point I watched much more than what I do now, to be quite honest. And maybe it's because I'm busier now, a little bit busier, but I don't know. Like, I feel like, the more our community continues to grow and the more that we want to become prominent, content creators within the MMA community and space, I feel like I try to not watch as much. I want to be as unaffected, unbiased as possible. I want to be as much of me as I can. Obviously, we're going to talk about the community and questions that come up, talk about tidbits from the MMA hour, from the Luke Thomas show. I forgot the name of it, so I just said his name. But you get the point. And I try to really not. I mean, I used to watch all kinds of YouTube. Me and Noah lived together for multiple years, and that's feel like all we would both do. But yeah, now it's like, I'll watch a couple betting things here and there, a couple fighter interviews. But all in all, like, I pretty much come on here with all my thoughts and opinions being unaffected, I'd like to think, most of the time. So yeah, I mean, it's fights on Saturday nights or Saturdays, depending on when the card is, and that's probably 90% of the content that I watch is the actual fights, I'd say.
I have been in that mindset ever since we started, where it's like I want to try to remain. That's why I put this question on here, was because I
Mhm.
just this I because obviously if you listen to somebody enough or watch somebody enough,
Right.
it can affect, you can find it affecting your opinion. And I've been trying so hard to not have that happen.
Mm.
But Dominic, I watch a lot of MMA content.
Mhm.
And mostly it comes down to the fact that while I work at my job, I listen to podcasts all day.
Yeah.
Like that's what I do to get through it. So MMA Hour, I will watch portions of. I'm not big on fighter interviews, so I kind of
Right.
I just like the stuff when it's Ariel and the boys, like
Yeah. Yeah.
GC, New York Rick, Frank. Those guys are great. I love watching that stuff. Like he does the his little Q&As like weekly. I love watching those. Morning Combat, I watch a lot of.
That's what it is.
Um, the Ringer MMA show, another Ariel Helwani product. And then I've been recently listening to a lot of um, why am I forgetting, Anik and Florian? So
Mm.
John Anik and Kenny Florian's show. So I've watched a lot of that. I think that's about it. So maybe it's not as much as some people out there. I mean, honestly, if you're listening to this, then I imagine
I
you're
know. I'd like to
probably
know
well, no,
from
I
listeners and
imagine
stuff.
we're not. I imagine most people, if they're listening to us regularly, probably means they're listening to like 6 or 7
Yeah, you're
other
like the
shows
ultimate. Yeah.
regularly. Because I mean, you're in deep if you're finding
Yeah.
us. So shout out to you guys. But yeah, I do find at times like someone will say something. I definitely think I'm very mindful of it. So literally, Dominic, what I do is most of those podcasts I just listen, I know when their episodes drop. So really, once the fights end, like last Saturday, when I woke up Sunday after we were done recording, I'm already studying the next card and trying
Mm.
to get my thoughts together right then,
Yeah.
because it's before any of this stuff comes out. And I'm not going to pretend that there hasn't been times where my opinion has been slightly altered or it's given me something to think about. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe they have a point there,
Mhm.
stuff like that. But I try to be forthcoming about that when I do. You'll hear me at times on the show mention like, oh, I've heard this from
Mhm.
this show. So I try to be honest about it. and give credit when I do hear good points. And there are times when after I've kind of had my opinion set, I'll listen to like somebody make a point on the show and I'll just be like, damn, I wish I would have thought of that. I do find
Or
that.
like, oh, we're on the same wavelength. You know what I mean? Almost too.
Mm,
Do you ever have that?
no, to be honest, I feel like I almost prefer to have a unique opinion. I don't like I don't get any sort of enjoyment out of someone agreeing with me on MMA.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of like whenever I say
It's
something that
different.
nobody else is saying or thinking. Like I don't like to just I think there's too many people, and this is probably in any space, but it probably applies to MMA. You know, you get on Twitter enough and that's the only opinion you have is whatever the majority kind of
Yeah.
tells you.
Yeah.
So I try to be completely honest with myself, and in doing so, if it happens to side with the majority opinion,
Mm-hmm.
great. And if not, I don't want to, you know, duck from that, like duck away
Right.
from that, you know.
And I hope everybody can like get a feel and sense of that from us when they hear and watch and listen. So yeah, I like that question. Little
Well,
it was like
Dominic,
a
I
breaking the
challenge you.
fourth
Like I've
wall.
challenged you a couple times. I feel like you could even be more of that. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you hold back, and I do think that you could be like I hear you talk about MMA like in our personal lives or just talking like in general, and like I do get a sense sometimes on the show like maybe you hold back a little bit. And
Mm.
I do think that you could even be like more your authentic self. I don't think you're faking anything, but I just think that sometimes you prefer to hold back.
Like I have a second gear, you know.
I
But I
do think you have a second gear. I think that like you're great now. Like people love Dom. People don't like me in the comments on this show. So they love you now, but but there's like this untapped potential, you know. That's what
mm-hmm,
I see.
mm-hmm,
That's what I see in you, young one.
mm. Yes, Padawan. Sensei.
Question number 4. This comes from a big time
Oh
viewer
yeah.
here. Shout out at Vispian7688. I hope that's how it's pronounced. We just kind of assume that, but
I
we're
think
not.
I would think,
But
yeah.
Dominic, we're not good at pronouncing names.
Not at all. Yeah.
Like you always try to hype me up when I mispronounce
I just
something.
need to give
And
up. Yeah.
yeah.
Because I
So
know I'm not good.
at Vispian7688 asked if Alexander Volkanovski were to beat Ilia Topuria, Aljamain Sterling, and Islam Makhachev in a rematch,
Whew.
then retires,
Damn.
is he a top 3 or 5 GOAT of all time? He also listed a few fighters who we feel like are in that conversation, kind of the obvious ones, right? And he was looking at it from like all of MMA. So
Mm-hmm.
remember that because he had Fedor in there and stuff.
Yeah.
So for all of MMA, you know, with those kind of wins in a row here, would that be enough to cement him in the top 5?
I sure the hell think so. I mean, this guy in his own weight class hasn't lost since I don't know. I couldn't even hold my PP to P yet. It feels like this dude, Alexander Volkanovski.
Wait a minute.
Was waiting on Noah's face
Wait.
there.
Um,
Um, he's unbelievable, and we're coming off this amazing performance he just had last week at 290, where he dismantled Yair Rodriguez and showed that he still has another gear that he can dial into. I mean, he's unbelievable. If he beats Topuria, he will be un
oh God.
undisputed
Oh.
greatest featherweight of all time. And then if he welcomes Aljamain Sterling up and beats him, he puts himself to top 5. And if he beats Islam Makhachev, he's top 3 and nipping at the toes of GSP and Jon Jones for best of all
Oh, I know
time.
that
If
had to
he,
hurt you. I was
yeah,
waiting to
I
see
know. I
who
didn't
you were
even
going to
say
list.
Anderson.
I
But
knew I was
that
waiting to see who you were going to list at number 2, and I was about to flame your ass. But
yeah.
I'm glad
He,
Dominic has embraced the fact that Anderson Silva he's mid.
oh boy. Anyways, Vispian Volkanovski goes down as top 3, if not better, all time if he beats those 3 names. And assuming that means he retires after that, I guess. I don't know. That wasn't necessarily said, but yeah, that's unbelievable, unrivaled resume.
God, I mean, I don't know if I can go as far as top 3, but I want to.
Do
Like
it.
I want to,
Do
but
the roar.
no, shut the fuck up. You sit there and be quiet.
Do it.
Daddy's talking right now.
I love you, Daddy.
um, so Jon Jones. Okay, so right now, if we're going all of MMA, Jon Jones, and then it's either Fedor or GSP. Like I don't know. God, I don't even know. It'd be really hard, but man, that is just what an incredible finish to a career that would be. You're talking about him beating,
Golly, dude.
and this is probably I don't. There's no assumption made that it's Aljo either coming off a win or a loss. I'm assuming this would be after the Sean O'Malley fight. I don't know if it matters. You beat a former bantamweight champion
Yeah.
who, if you were to do that fight at that time, I would imagine that means he beat Sean O'Malley and the UFC booked it as like a champion versus champion fight.
Yeah.
So I'm going through the hoops in my own
Yeah.
head here. That this is not made clear in the question, but I'm just like assuming this.
Yeah.
So he beats a sitting bantamweight champion, then
Mhm.
moves up and becomes a 2 division champion and beats Islam Makhachev. I'll definitely say top 5. I'll say he kicks out Anderson Silva.
Mm. No, that's fair because he would have done the same.
No,
for me.
I'm joking. I'm joking. I no, but I do think top 5 territory, 100%.
He just can't get those extra 2 spots.
I don't know.
That's the hard part.
God, it's
Like that's
so.
what's great. Each of these wins is like one of everything. You beat the surging, undefeated, shiny new guy in Topuria, a champion or former champion in Sterling, and the protege of Habib and Makhachev. Like that's
No,
great.
I
They're all
know.
3
Like
different things.
he would definitely have an argument, especially if he just retires and never comes back from
Oh
after
my
that.
god, what a finish to a
Because you know
career!
me, for my like when I evaluate resumes, I do take into account like the end
Well,
of the
that's what hurts
careers.
Anderson for you, right?
It
You
hurts
know.
Anderson. It does hurt Fedor a little bit.
Yep.
Um, I mean, for now though, I'll say potentially top 3, but I can't commit to it as much as Dom did. But damn, that's a hard resume to beat, man.
That would be like one of the craziest finishing runs to a retirement ever.
And then
Like,
how crazy is that, Dom? We could potentially. I mean, I know it's like the Aljo fight was like kind of out of left field for me. Like I hadn't really considered that. I'm like, well, it's definitely possible.
yeah, oh yeah.
It doesn't seem like
Aljo's
the most
going up.
likely path. Like it seems like
Yeah,
if he fights Ilya, the next fight's at lightweight,
right.
assuming that he would
It
win,
feels like
right?
Aljo would be the third one almost. You
Yeah,
know?
maybe. So, but if we do go off of this, we imagine those 3 fights, they probably happen in the next year and a half.
End of
Into
2024.
into
Yeah.
2024. Yeah, that's
Mm.
what I'm thinking. So crazy how
Oof.
right now it's not even made clear by the majority of the community if he's the best featherweight of all time.
Mhm.
But in a year and a half, we could be calling him potentially the best of all time.
That
That's
that
how
would be
fast this game
insane.
moves. Does that
Yeah, it
not
is
just
though.
show how fast this game moves? You're
It
talking
really does.
3 fights in the next year and a half that could take him from being like the second best featherweight of all time to the best fighter of all time, or at least one of the top ones.
Yeah. Well, like, do you view him as like top 10 on your list right now? Has he cracked
I'd
in?
have to I'd have to
Yeah,
I'd have
same.
to
That
do
was
the
an unfair
math. I
question.
It's been a
But
while since
yeah,
it's been a while. Anyways, it's been a while since I've God, I can't
same.
say that word with I can't say that line. It has been
A
a
long
little
time.
longer than expected
Yeah, there you go.
since I put a list together like that. It's probably overdue for me to
Yeah.
evaluate because the thing I don't like though, Dom, is when I make them when you have to rank guys who are still fighting. Because to me, like I
Yeah.
said, the end of the careers do affect it. So like,
Yeah.
Usman, I felt like was a borderline top 10 guy, and now he's lost 2 straight to Leon Edwards. How does that, move him in my rankings, right?
Mhm.
I don't know. I think he'd be close. He'd be close. I mean, Jose
Mhm.
Aldo's
I think
close to borderline top 5.
yeah, I think when we did that almost 3 years ago, he was like 5 or 6 for me all time, I think.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Question number 5. very fun one here, Dominic. I saw it on Twitter one time and I wrote it down, but I forgot to write whose tweet it was, so I apologize. Who is someone in MMA that could benefit from moving to bare knuckle FC
Mm.
like Mike Perry did? Dominic, I know you just love this question.
Yeah. This is one of those where we might need to be a little bit more open here, or maybe you take the reins. If I had to pick someone right now, man, there's only so many people that are like Mike Perry. that's the
Well,
that's
what are
the
we
one
what are we
thing.
saying here, right? We're saying a guy that's he's got big character,
Yeah.
but maybe has stagnated as an MMA fighter
Yeah.
and but has that dog in him like Mike Perry does to
Yeah.
where this style of fighting and BKFC might just be more fitting for them. Like who's someone yeah, I mean if you want me to go first, I can give you an answer that came into my head.
Go ahead. I have one, but go ahead.
The one that came into my head was Kevin Holland.
Oh shit. Yeah. Yeah.
You
That's a
know,
really good answer.
that's a guy who could be a big old star for BKFC, at least as much as you
Yeah,
can
that's
be a
such a good
star,
answer.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that his fight style I would like to think it would translate. Now, BKFC does not appear, from what I've seen, to be favorable to guys that depend on like striking at range or using reach because they like to keep everything close quarters. We saw
Yeah.
that when Mike Perry fought MVP, but I believe Kevin Holland doesn't, he doesn't depend on his reach. I don't think necessarily. I think he's about it. He'll get in the
Mm.
pocket. He doesn't have to
Yeah.
worry about someone taking him down.
Okay. I'm gonna go with this one instead.
Oh God.
Sugar Sean O'Malley would be a trip, I think, to see
So he would
in
benefit. So
bare
you're saying
knuckle.
he could get the bigger heights in BKFC than he could in the UFC.
No, I mean I dead ass think he can be a champion. I don't even remember what fight I said. He could definitely be a UFC champion. And I think that's the difference from guys like Kevin Holland and Mike Perry. But man, and I know Sean's gonna make a lot more money than Mike Perry and Kevin Holland in the UFC. But if that tells you anything, I think he could make even more money in bare knuckle. They've shown that they want to throw money around. If they could land a guy like Sean O'Malley, they would pay him more, I would imagine, than the UFC would. And I feel like his character, his
Yeah,
look,
that's
he's a
perfect for yeah.
striker. Like that all is makes him fit so good there. So I think maybe not benefit as much, but he could benefit enough
Like
to where I think he could
he
fit
would
there.
still be like he'd be good. He'd be okay.
Yes.
If his UFC career ended today and he went to BKFC, he'd be
Oh
good.
yeah. Oh yeah.
You know
Absolutely.
another answer that came into my head? This is not a realistic
See,
one,
this is
by the
where we
way.
open it up, though. This
This
is where they
isn't a
get fun.
realistic one, but for the fight style and maybe a little bit of the character, like I think would be a lot of fun. How about Michael Chandler?
Yes, that was the first name that I would. Yep, 100%. I
Michael
think so.
Chandler would be a lot of fun in
Mm-hmm.
BKFC. I mean, I know Dominic's just in there like, man, I ain't watching that bullshit. But for me, I mean, BKFC's kind of disappeared ever since that pay-per-view event. Like the
With
last I
Connor.
heard, yeah, the last I heard from them was I think it's David Feldman, the president, came out and said that their pay-per-view performed below expectations because too many people pirated the
Mm-hmm.
pay-per-view. And now I ain't heard from them since. And that kind of worries me. Like it makes me feel like they're in trouble. Because I mean, I don't know if you heard the story going in about how Feldman put like a second mortgage on his house to make the
Yeah, he
event
went all
happen,
in. Yeah.
which I hope worked out. But if the pay per view does, anyways, I'm just saying that those would be some pretty fun fights if you got guys like that in there. Imagine
Yeah.
Mike Perry versus Mike Chandler and like bare knuckle.
Oh my gosh. You get a little rematch with
I
Mike
mean, really,
Chandler and Eddie Alvarez.
dare I say, I mean, Conor McGregor in BAFC would be pretty fun.
Michael Chandler has a higher chance of fighting Conor McGregor in BKFC than he does the UFC.
No, you're wrong. Michael Chandler posted a Christmas tree
Michael, I'm
emoji,
sorry.
so
I can't.
he posted a
I'm sorry.
Christmas tree emoji. We're good.
I
It's
think me and
happening.
Michael would get along, and I'm just so
He
mean to him.
posts. You're not addressing. He posted the Christmas tree emoji. We're good.
He's fighting Grant Dawson.
Did you see? Did you see the tweet?
I did see the Christmas tree.
Tell me that fight's happening.
Well, so much for the 6 months in USADA.
They said USADA, bitch, get out the way.
I thought it'd be announced immediately following Francis's announcement, but it did not yet. So
That just would have been too obvious if the UFC would
yeah,
have done it
give it a
again.
week. Give it a week.
Well, I think they tried to do it like with the Jon Jones Stipe thing when Ariel posted that, hey, the Fury and Ngannou fight will be announced in the upcoming days. The UFC blew their load. And then when the announcement came, and that video, man, when he's saying when he's singing that American Pie song,
Yeah.
and he's saying what's he saying? What's the line? He goes like, "Today, this will be the day that I die."
Yeah.
I'm like, whoo,
Yeah.
that's a baller ass video right there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I don't know where I was going with that. Question number 6, Dominic. This comes from at mmamania on Twitter. They just put this tweet out there. I want to kind of change the question just ever so slightly, or maybe we can hash it out together. Which fighter from 1993 to 2014 would thrive in today's social media / entertainment era? And I think the caveat to this question should be we should be like for the question, it should be like if social media were around when they were fighting.
Right.
Not if you
Not
took
they're here
them
today.
and put them today, because the fight styles have evolved so much.
Yeah.
I think it's more fun if it's like if social media and if kind of the entertainment era where now was more like that during the early days of the UFC, like who would benefit, who would thrive in that, Dominic?
There was one name.
Okay.
And one name only so far that came into my head. The Huntington Beach bad boy.
Tito Ortiz. That was immediately jumped in my head. Tell me he would not be a Conor McGregor level star if they had that back then.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's kind of a similar personality to Sean Strickland, and you look at Sean being, big, right, relatively in the space. Tito, though, was a champion and had all these rivalries built in. Yes, he would be as close to Conor, I feel like, as anybody could have been. Tito Ortiz would be a thriving heel as all be out in the UFC. 100%.
You just compare him and Sean Strickland.
In terms of their personalities, and not
Tito
afraid
Ortiz
to say anything.
Was never flirting with murdering people.
It's the way that they act and will not refrain from saying.
No,
anything.
I do get that a little bit. I mean, Tito Ortiz did wear a shirt to his weigh-ins one time that said "Dana is my bitch."
Yeah.
And there was the time when he beat Guy Mesger, teammate of Ken Shamrock, and he had a shirt on, when they start putting their shirts on after the fight, his shirt said "Gay Mesger is my bitch."
Yeah,
Tito, that's when the beef with him and Ken Shamrock started, was because of that. So
imagine that rivalry with social media.
Because that was the first rivalry that got them on any TV time, the Best Damn Sports Show. Yeah, well, no, that's the press conference. I don't think
I know, but it's so funny.
But yes, that is very funny. He's like, "I will beat you into a living death."
But no, they were on the closest to that though, Tito.
Who's the closest, for
who would be the runner-up of this answer?
I was trying because the Tito was the one that I immediately went to. Another answer that kind of came to mind, kind of a weird one. Bob Sapp.
Okay. I can see it.
This man was massive in Japan. Literally
and
figuratively.
Yeah.
The only problem would be that he could never fight in the United States because that man was pissing motor oil. But I think his kind of the kind of presence he had and the size and whatnot and just the kind of I don't know, he just had this it factor about him. And Dominic, I'm not even so much thinking that he would thrive from it in an MMA capacity, but I do think he would have transitioned into a very successful pro wrestling career if he had. He did do a lot of pro wrestling in Japan, but again, I think he could have become just as big of a star in Japan, or just as much of a star as he was in Japan. I think he could have become that in America if social media had been around more prevalently.
He
So
could
I
have
don't
been
think
like a
his
reverse Brock
yeah,
Lesnar.
like I don't think his MMA career would have lasted much longer than at
Yeah.
least the prime did. I know he kind of continued fighting well beyond what he should have, but I think he would have transitioned into a nice pro wrestling career, or even had more movie opportunities. He was in The Longest Yard, though. So
I think I broke it in my nose.
and I'm trying to think if there's anybody else who maybe I'm missing here.
um, I don't know, man. There's like you just got to think of like characters and stuff. Because
Like
Chuck was a
who's
character, but not a flamboyant personality.
well, I definitely think he would have benefited. I
Yo,
mean,
yeah.
but
So many
anybody
people
who
would have
Randy
benefited.
Couture would have benefited. Like anybody who was
Yeah.
like a bigger draw in the
Oh
company
yeah.
would have benefited. Brock Lesnar would have
Yeah.
benefited, right?
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of some of those guys, like you're saying, like who's someone that really didn't get their due, but would have potentially with maybe like, I mean, would it be weird to say like a Heath Herring?
He was. Yeah. We
He's
talked
an
about him in
interesting
our last case side.
character. He kind of
Yeah.
has like a little bit of had the interesting hair choices and stuff. Like I don't know. Another guy I was thinking of didn't have much of like the personality side, but if you're going like early UFC, Chemo Leopoldo,
Oh.
he's the guy that gave Hoist Gracie like his toughest fight, and
Okay.
he was a very imposing presence. Not the best fighter in the world, but he gave Hoist Gracie a tough fight, and he was well known, Dominic, because he would carry a cross out to the octagon,
Mm,
like Jesus Christ did.
right. Right. What about BJ Penn?
Yeah,
Maybe
that's a great
he was kind of
answer.
a wild guy, crazy fights.
Jens Pulver.
Yeah. Shout out to him, by the way, Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
There's
I
good
mean,
ones, but it's funny we both were like agreed on Tito without ever even discussing this. Like he
yeah.
just immediately popped into my head. He
I
was
mean,
the
Ken Shamrock might even be the second
Ken
best
would have been
option.
great too.
Because if you're
Yeah.
talking like a guy who went from MMA to pro wrestling, I mean, he could have had more of that Brock Lesnar level.
Mm-hmm.
Like him being involved in both would have only boosted his profile, like in terms of pay per view draw.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fun question.
Yeah, it was. Question number 7, the last question for today, Dominic.
Yeah.
We're bringing it back up. What's your MMA hot take that will get the people raging?
This is the question I struggled with the most when I saw the list initially. And I was trying to think of like, who do I think could be a champion that would make people mad? What do I think right now that would? Because I feel like this is a question you see like once a month at least on Twitter. They show the picture of what would be
Right.
your hot take that makes people react like this. We're gonna have to open the floor here because I truthfully cannot think of something I would say that could get like that reaction. I don't know. Like
Okay.
one of the things I said recently, at least that we disagreed on and that you were pretty strong against, was when I said Joanna was ranked above Ronda for me.
Oh,
And I
God, I
still
can't
feel
believe you
strongly
brought that
about
back
that.
up. I can't believe you brought
But
that back up.
that's like the only thing I can say right now. Like stuff that's happening right now, I don't know. I don't know
All
if I
right, I'll
have
say
one
it.
right now.
I'll say it. And I hate to say it because
Wonder if I would rage to what you're gonna say.
no, I think you know I feel this way.
Okay.
Um, Lawler versus McDonald 2 is very
Oh,
good, but not great.
yeah, yeah, that's a good one.
The fight
Do you feel like?
itself. The fight
Yeah,
itself is very good,
yeah,
but the reason why it's remembered so fondly is like the build up, the moments, the face off. I do not believe it is the best fight of all time, even though I
yeah.
did just buy a shirt from Full Violence that says best fight of all time. It's an iconic fight,
Yes,
but like if
it
you
is.
look at like Robbie's title fights, him and Carlos Condit is just a much better fight, and the big reason is him and Rory for like the first 2 rounds. Fight's kind of boring. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
boring for like 2 rounds, but then it picks up big way. Like the last 2.5 rounds of that fight are
Insane.
fantastic,
Yeah.
awesome, great moments. It is like up there if you're ranking all time fights, but
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of it is more carried by the legacy, the
Yeah.
moments. if you're going off the fight itself, it's very good, but not great.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I don't know. I feel like a bitch, but I don't feel like I have any.
I should try to think of one that you've said that's just like made me go like, what the fuck?
I feel like ever since we did the hot takes episode years ago, like,
I mean, you did what we did say on that episode. This is part of the reason why I want to like hide like our first 100 episodes is that we said that UFC events are better without fans.
yeah, that was a good one. If you're talking hot take, that was a good one.
Yeah, what were we
And
thinking at that time? I mean, just my
yeah, I don't
God.
know. It was that new stuff. We're like, this is cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were sucking off the UFC back then. We're doing reviews of their Fight Island documentary, talking about how it's like the
Yeah.
fucking world changing, and oh my God. Ugh, something I'm trying to think of something because you used to be the hot take king.
I know. I feel like I've cooled down. I've lost.
I mean, I remember you
thunder.
predicted CM Punk to beat Mickey Gall at UFC 203. I remember that.
Yeah. But
Which I
that
don't
would
know
be
if that
relevant
was
today.
no,
Like
I know,
people
I know.
raging today. Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
do you find more entertainment in your like WWE watch throughs that you're doing versus like the UFC fight nights?
Ooh, no, probably not. Yeah, even like a card like this weekend, it's just
Okay.
still,
Because
this.
that would have been if you would have said
Oh
something
yeah,
that
that would have
like
been pretty crazy.
compliments pro wrestling, but like this is MMA,
Yeah,
people would have. There's got to be something pro wrestling related you can throw out there, like
I don't know. I've never had a blank and non-contributive part to a question on here for verbal until like this one. I was thinking about like saying who I think could be a champion, but I'm like,
yeah.
it's probably not that
I mean, if only these
crazy.
questions had been on this list for like a week and a half or 2 months or something, right? You could have
Yeah, you
looked
know
at
how
them
I
at any
do
time.
these though.
Yeah, it's really benefiting us right now, isn't it?
I'll just bring back up Joanna again. Joanna legacy, or well, is
All right. Anyways,
greater
let's
on the
move on.
list.
Let's move on to
All right.
the. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, Joanna, number 3 women's fighter all time.
Yes, Ronda
Ronda,
number 4.
number 4. I don't know how people would react to that. I personally think that's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I feel like more people would agree, or it wouldn't be as lopsided from a vast majority. Maybe it would.
I think my other one was that if you're going off of like legacy, if you're talking about, or maybe it was like Holly Holm has a overrated resume
Mm. Ooh,
because you look at her, like all of her best opponents are her losses. Like
that's true.
Ronda is the elite win that she has. Like you look at the rest of the
Yeah,
wins she has, they're not exactly like elite fighters.
that is
Trying
true.
to think what her next best win is. Didn't she beat Juliana? She beat Juliana Pena?
I don't think so, because Val and Tina did. I don't think Holm
Yeah.
has.
Okay.
Irene Aldana, is that the second best win of Holly Holm's career?
Raquel Pennington?
Yeah,
Betchka
name
Hea?
value, the way she did it. Yeah, that's true.
I'm joking. Betchka Hea is not her second best win, but that's why, like, I think she's great, but you see the point. What I'm trying to say there.
Tom Aspinall will be the greatest heavyweight of all time in UFC history.
Now that pisses me off. No, I'm just kidding. Dominic, with that, let's move on to the only segment we know how to end this show with. A little segment we like to call closing statements. The point of the show where me and Dominic can talk about anything and everything, MMA related or not. So, Dominic, any closing statements to send us off into the week?
I'm going to bring up one last question because I felt like I let you guys down on the technically last question. And it's one that we put on here as like an extra, and I'm going to do it. Combat Sports Insider on Twitter. And I think Noah maybe had this originally and then moved it because we rearranged the episode because of the preview. EA Sports just announced they're doing UFC 5. Big reveal in September. who should be on the cover of UFC 5?
I'm glad you did this.
Yeah, Leon Edwards.
Yeah, sorry, Dominic, for cutting you off, but I'm glad you did this. I think this is a big redemption arc for you right here. This is your web redemption moment, because I like this question. I do.
It's a fun question. We love video games, even though I feel like I've retired from them. And real quick, because I think I have a picture of all the other covers, but Leon Edwards should be on the cover of the next game. I want to start by saying that. Noah, do you have a name in mind? I'm going to pull up all of the
UFC
cover
1
athletes.
is Jon Jones and Alexander Gustafsson.
Yep.
UFC 2 is Ronda and Connor. 3 is Connor.
Yep.
4 is Masvidal and Adesanya.
Yes, it is.
So it seems like they've been going with the whole, 3 of the 4, 2 fighters on the cover, right? So is this, wait, was the question who should be or who will be?
Who should be?
Oh, who should be? Because that changes things a little bit.
It does. Mm-hmm.
If it's who should be, I think Alexander Volkanovski should be on the cover.
So are we doing one person cover?
Fair? I would do Alexander Volkanovski, but then you release like a GOAT edition and have GSP on the cover.
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be lit.
They do that in other sports games.
Yeah.
I can't really take credit. I saw like a fake cover that was like
Mhm.
GSP GOAT edition. But they do that. Like it'd be like an ultimate edition. I don't know. I want to do like a 2-person, but like I was trying to think of a female that kind of matches that. But Amanda just retired, and I don't think you'd put her on there.
No.
And I don't think Rose you'd put on there at this point. Yeah, I mean, maybe Zhang Wei Li. Like I don't see her and Volk really fitting on the cover, right? Who I think will be on the cover, I feel like everybody keeps saying it's going to be Izzy and Jon Jones.
Oh.
I'll be honest with you, Dominic. Would the EA really put Jon Jones on the cover, like knowing the risk that the risk?
Oh.
I mean, he was on you're right. He was on the cover of UFC 1, but that was a different time.
That was a long time ago. Yeah.
Like, would you do it when
I don't think
that there's a risk? I was thinking how cool it'd be if they did Izzy and Anderson Silva.
Oh, now you're just trying to.
No, I think I'm trying to think of a legend and a current day fighter that sort of mirror each other. That's why I said Volk and GSP, because I feel like those two, like when I look at Volk, I see a lot of GSP in them. Maybe
Anderson Izzy would be sick.
I mean, the Leon answer is very good. I feel like you could do Leon and Michael Bisping, maybe.
Yeah, and if they just do modern like they did with Jorge and Izzy, I think you could easily do Leon and Volk, and that'd be a dope ass cover. Two of your biggest guys right now, global audiences.
While we're talking about UFC 5, please give us like a mode where I can be like Dana White. Give me a promoter mode, please.
Yeah, like a franchise mode, like for Madden and stuff, where you can
kind of like I just want to be like the guy booking the Madden. I want to deal with the fighters. Like I want to be.
Oh, it'd be so cool. They have so much potential to make these games good, better.
I want to pick the locations for the fights. Like I want to do all that, dude.
I'd love to do the promotions, the ticketing, the arenas. Yeah,
I'd love to keep their pay below 15% on our. Just be as soon as someone cuts, it's gonna be like a cut scene in The Office. It's gonna be like, I don't know, Leon Edwards walking in saying he wants to like go box or something. I'm just like, get the fuck out of my face with that bullshit.
And then you're like, morale with employees goes down.
Yeah, it's like -5.
Yeah.
No, I that's the mode. Like that's
like the missing piece, though.
I am gonna buy UFC 5. I will. Because I'm actually going to like embrace it this year. I got the PS5. I haven't played it since I moved into my new apartment.
What if they don't have that mode? Will you still buy it?
Yeah, I'll still buy it. I'll just embrace. I'm going to have to try to force myself to play online.
Oh yeah, true.
Because I never do that. But I'm going to buy the new Mortal Kombat. Like I got to get used to like getting online for fighting games. I got to embrace it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good games coming up. You got those two. And then I'm really excited about the new Spider-Man game, so I'm going to have a busy fall. I'm excited to see the details. And I even put a tweet about this, Tom. Every time EA says, hey, new UFC video game coming soon, I get so excited, and then as
Mm-hmm.
soon as the details are out, I'm just so disappointed every time.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I hope they
But
can do something different. It'd be nice.
yeah, my closing statements also involving MMA. Dominic, I finished the book Cage Kings.
Oh, I
So
do
I know
remember you
I had
telling me about
mentioned
that.
this. I know I mentioned it to you. I don't believe we did it during a recording.
Mm-mm.
So for those of you that don't know Cage Kings, I decided before my vacation to Florida, because it's a long drive, I was gonna try to pick up becoming like an audio book guy, like an audio reader, which is not reading at all. I love podcasts, but there's only so many of them that I watch consistently or
Mm-hmm.
listen to consistently. So I was like, well, audiobooks aren't much different than a podcast.
True.
So I've been doing that for a couple months now. I became a monthly subscriber to Audible through Amazon Prime, and I was just looking up books about MMA, UFC, boxing stuff. History books. Like I
Mm-hmm.
love that kind of stuff. And I saw when I first looked this book called Cage Kings that wasn't even out yet. It came out like now it's been almost a month ago. And it's literally the story of the UFC from
Mm.
beginning. And from now reading it, I can tell you it goes all the way up until basically the end of McGregor Mayweather. And then
Okay.
there's like an epilogue that kind of talks more about after that. But
Mm.
um, I thought it was very good. Thought it was very good. It was a very good read. I think Michael Thompson is the author, but it's definitely at its best when it's talking about like the beginning all the way
Oh
up
yeah.
until like basically when Brock Lesnar's brought in.
Nice.
Because that time period, like there's so many things that they say in this book that like I didn't know. I was shocked actually at some of the details. I had no idea that the UFC and HBO were potentially gonna have a
Hmm.
deal before they went to Fox and stuff. Like, could you imagine like the UFC on HBO? Like, it's crazy.
Mm.
But stuff like that. There was some other really cool details in there. I think once it hits the Brock Lesnar portion, and then you kind of get into the Fox deal. There's some good stuff with the Fox deal, like I just said. Maybe it's more so when the Fox deal happens because then you get into the Rousey stuff,
Mm.
McGregor, McGregor Mayweather, the cell, all that, and most of that stuff I kind of knew. So it's sort of
Yeah.
the second half of the book is not as good as the first half, but it's
Mm.
it's great, and I recommend it to anybody who is a fan or. And especially if you're someone who doesn't know like a ton of the history, like it's a great read to kind of get you caught up.
Nice.
Dominic, you
That's
need to
cool.
read it or
I should.
listen to it
But
because
then there's a real book too, though, right? That you can buy.
yeah, if
Okay.
you prefer, you can buy the real book. I'm not much of a reader, so I
Yeah.
prefer like doing
Same.
audiobooks, but
Yeah.
yeah. But it is
Huh.
I may potentially buy like the hardback copy just to have
Just to
it,
like own it. Yeah.
which is kind of weird, but
That'd be a cool
I'm
shelf
a
piece,
physical media guy. I can't
Yeah.
help it.
Yeah. Yeah. Cage Kings.
Cage Kings, and it's got like a bigger title after that, but it's Cage Kings by Michael Thompson.
All right. All right.
But my name's Noah Baker. That's Dominic Slee. We are but just two of the below average Joes, and we'll see you guys on Monday.